Thank you for joining today's conference call with Governor Andrew Cuomo. I will now turn it over to Governor Cuomo.
Good morning, guys, gent, and neutral. I wonder if I have to say that every time. We have Melissa DeRosa. We have Robert Mejica. We have Dr. Zucker. We have Beth Garpy. We have Gareth Rhodes on the phone. Today is day 239, but who's counting? We did 120,000 tests. The microclusters, Brooklyn, Queens, Orange, Rockland, Steuben, Chemung, positivity rate of 3.1. To give you an idea of the progress we've made in that, Brooklyn is 4.4 this week, down from 5.3. Rockland, 3.6 this week, down from 4.5. Orange, 2.6, down from 4.6. That is great news. It says the focus works, and it says we can get the positivity under control. And as we saw with Queens this past week, we get the numbers down. We then open up the areas. It's just math. Statewide, without these hotspots, 1.06. Okay? The positivity with the microclusters, 1.3. 12 New Yorkers passed away. They're in our thoughts and prayers. Hospitalization is down 30, 1,015, 227 ICU, 118 intubated. Context is everything here. We have had the highest number of cases for 3 days this past week in the country. We're seeing a real national surge. And we are battling that national surge, that national high tide, right? Because although we like to think we control our own destiny, we still have people coming from around the country into New York. And the numbers nationwide are really high and getting higher. Thursday, Friday, Saturday saw the 3 highest one-day counts nationwide. 85,000 cases on Friday was a one-day record. So, we are fighting the national tide, and so far, we are defying the national tide. Mr. Meadows said something interesting today, Chief of Staff to the President. He said we can't control the virus. That was a very telling statement that he said that, because it basically admitted and encapsulated the way they've handled COVID from the start. Remember back in January, they had that Navarro memo that said millions would get infected. The president then denied it and then lied about it. They have believed from the beginning that they can't control the virus. That's the only rationale that explains the denial and the lying. If you believed you could control it, then you try to control it. If you don't believe you can control it, then you lie about it and deny it and you minimize it. Meadows spoke the truth today as to their opinion. You can't control the virus. Now, he is fundamentally wrong on the facts because we are in the state of New York, and New York proved definitively you can control the virus. When you go from the highest infection rate in the country to one of the lowest, it means you controlled the virus. This is not rhetoric. It's not subject to interpretation. You had a very high infection rate. You took certain measures and reduced the infection rate. What term do you use to define that situation? You controlled the virus. Controlled. You didn't eliminate the virus, but you controlled the virus. If New York didn't control the virus, then the curve would have continued to go up. And we would have had hundreds of thousands of people in our hospital system, and we would have been overwhelmed. Flattening the curve is controlling the virus, right? By definition, friends, this is not political discussion. This is just English language. Flattening the curve is controlling the virus. Controlling is a different word than eliminating. We controlled the virus. So he is wrong. But that's what they believe. And that's why they never tried to control the virus. And that is why the situation is in the situation, this country is in the situation it's in. Because they didn't believe they can control the virus. They could have controlled the virus. We are still controlling the virus. Look at the numbers going up all across the nation. We are still controlling the virus. They believed you can't control the virus. They capitulated. They surrendered. They surrendered without firing a shot. It was the great American surrender. Americans don't surrender. And they didn't even put up a fight. And what we learned in New York was, if you put up a fight, you would have won. Because New York won. Other states won also. We can't control the virus. Trump's theory, preemptive capitulation. Don't even try. Just surrender preemptively. President Trump, commander-in-chief, gets attacked by an enemy, and his policy, preemptive capitulation. That's what they did. And now we have 217,000 people dead because of preemptive capitulation. They were wrong then. They're wrong now. Simplest thing they can do now is what Fauci said, what CDC says, what Birx says, wear masks, do a national mask mandate. Preemptive capitulation, you did Americans a disservice. Americans don't surrender. Americans fight. and there was no reason to capitulate to this enemy because we can control it. Questions for myself or my colleagues? Operator?
As a reminder, to ask a question, you will need to press star 1 on your telephone. To withdraw your question, press the pound key. Please stand by while we compile the Q&A roster. Our first question is from the line of Joe Spector from USA Today. Your line is now open.
I got picked to ask a question. I'm about to go play the lottery tonight.
How you doing, Joseph?
Good. Thanks, Governor. 4 years ago, you and Melissa, you went to Trump Tower. You spent a little time with the president. You laid out some of the things that were important to New York, infrastructure, the tunnel, all of these things. And, you came out hopeful that as the president, being from New York, he would understand the issues that were important to his home state and that there might be some, home, ideas that would come out of that. But now you look 4 years later, are there any things you could point to that the president has been helpful with, or has it all been blocked each and every step of the way?
It has all been negative, Joe. Our theory was he's a New Yorker, and a New Yorker might be inclined to help New York. That was our theory. That was assuming you were dealing with a rational human being. The way it turned out, the president is angry at New York because New York voted for Hillary. He's angry at New York because he feels that he was rejected by his own home state. He's angry at New York because New York is the home of a lot of media outlets. And he's angry at the media outlets. The president also, as has been admitted by people around him, uses New York as a campaign ploy to say New York is doing poorly. That's what happens when Democrats control something. And he tries to make New York a negative stereotype to fuel his politics and fire up his base. Not only does he do it politically, he then does it substantively. Everything he has done is negative. Starts with SALT, and I know you're tired of hearing it, but Joe, just think of this. The Republican Party is against redistribution of wealth, right? That's their primary argument. You're going to tax the rich so you can give it to the poor. The Republican Party says we're against redistribution of wealth. They did the greatest redistribution of wealth ever done with SALT. They took from the rich states and gave to the poor states. That was the largest redistribution ever done, $14 billion from the state of New York, to give to the poor states. It happened to be Democratic states to Republican states. And it's sort of ironic that the Democratic states were richer states. But that's what SALT was. Hypocritical, repugnant to their own principles, and it was a theft. Taking from the richer states to give to the poor. Guys like McConnell, they are subsidized by us, which, you want to further the irony, if New York is the golden goose that is supporting your state, why wouldn't you want to help the golden goose? You're going to starve the golden goose? You're living off the largesse of the golden goose. You're going to starve yourself. But salt, no Hudson River tunnels, although he owns the tunnels, they're owned by Amtrak. The federal government owns Amtrak. He owns the tunnels. He didn't fix the tunnels he owns. 2nd Avenue subway in Manhattan. Every federal administration, Democratic, Republican, funded the 2nd Avenue subway. Not this president. No train from LaGuardia. He hasn't done the environmental approval. We're going to have the airport at LaGuardia constructed. He hasn't finished the environmental approval for the train. This from a president who scoffs at the environmental approval process. Remember who we're talking about. The president who says, all these environmental reviews, slow development, the secret process is so time-consuming. He still hasn't finished the environmental review for the train from LaGuardia. So everything he has done is negative. Then he also, TTP, which is now being investigated by the DHS Inspector General. So everything he has done has been negative, personally motivated and politically motivated. Guys, you want to have anything to add? Rob, Melissa?
No, I think you got it, Governor, and I think on your point on salt, when they tried to do this last time in the 80s, one of the people that helped stop it was President Reagan because he knew what it would do to his home state of California. And then you look at what this president did, leaning in, understanding how much it would hurt the people of New York. I think it tells you all you need to know.
Operator, next question.
We have our next question from the line of Louis Fair from the New York Times. Your line is now open.
How are you, Governor?
Good. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday to you.
Thank you. So early voting began yesterday in New York, and that's put a spotlight, as always, on the New York City Board of Elections. You mentioned last month that if there were to be any changes to the board, that you would favor that the City Council propose the reforms and then send those to the state to approve. But it's the state that has ultimate control over any changes. So why shouldn't you, the governor, take the lead on this issue and propose your own reforms that you like to see at the New York City Board of Elections, and why haven't you?
And Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, the New York City Board of Elections is run by New York City. It's controlled by New York City. Beth, is that right?
Yes, that's correct, Governor. The county boards of elections and the New York City Board of Election, in this case, are run by the local governments. There are state statutes that are implicated, but I think what the governor was referring to earlier was the desire to have the New York City Council pass a home rule request for the state legislature then to consider.
And then, Luis, the state board of elections, I don't run that either. That's bipartisan. What's the membership, Beth, on the state board of elections?
Yes, there are 4 commissioners, one each selected at the request of the major political parties. In that case, that's Republican and Democrat in the state. And then the legislative leaders that represent each of those parties each get an appointment as well.
Yeah, so the State Board of Elections is bipartisan. I don't run that. The City Board of Elections is run by the city. If they want to make a change, they should just pass it. And whatever they pass, I will support in the legislature. But we need a state law to change the New York City Board of Elections. The state board won't do it. I can't get it done through the state board. So they would need a law. They run it. They appoint the people. They set the rules. So if they want to make changes, just pass the changes you want, because the state legislature is not going to unilaterally change the New York City Board of Elections. That's the political control and governmental control of New York City. Next question, operator.
Thank you, sir. We have our next question from the line of Lawrence Stanforth from Albany Times Union. Your line is now open.
Oh, thanks. We're trying to wrap up how early voting went yesterday. And do you have any idea, Governor, or anyone else on the panel, how many people participated in early voting statewide yesterday? And if there were any hiccups or anything that maybe needs to be addressed going forward this week?
I do not know. I heard that there was a tremendous number of people for early voting, which is very exciting. But I haven't heard anything besides that. Has anyone heard anything? Melissa, Beth, Rob, nothing?
I know that yesterday, and Beth, feel free to jump in. I know by 1 o'clock yesterday, more people had voted statewide in early voting than the entirety of the 10-day window in June. But Beth, did we have any more numbers since that?
You're right, Melissa. As of mid-afternoon, we were on pace in a single day to outpace the entire early voting turnout, but we have not seen those updated numbers. We've been in communication with the state board about any hiccups, and other than seeing some long lines, we did not have any reports of any major issues.
Operator, let's take one more.
Give me 1 second here. We have our next question from the line of Shant Sharijan from New York Daily News. Your line is now open.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call, Governor. I also had a voting question. As I'm sure you've seen, New Yorkers have been complaining all weekend about long lines. Wanted to get your comment on that and whether you think the city BOE should have opened more early voting sites, you know, given the incredible interest in this year's vote.
I don't know what the City Board of Elections did or didn't do. I think they, of course, everyone anticipated a high turnout for early voting, right? That's been a nationwide phenomenon. I mean, the national news is all over a tremendous turnout for early voting. I don't know what they did or they didn't do. So, does anybody on the phone know?
I don't have, Governor, the exact numbers of early voting sites that New York City stood up. I do think that it's prudent for every New Yorker to make a plan to vote. We are abiding by COVID-safe procedures, which does include reducing density inside poll places. And as a result of that, lines can be longer than normal. So we would ask voters to be prepared for that. It's another reason why, again, we resisted efforts to reduce the number of polling places available throughout this emergency, and we've required that they maintain the same number of polling places that they've always had.
Yeah, and just because you have to remember the way the Board of Elections works in New York City. The county boards appoint a citywide Board of Elections. They then make rules. Some are state rules, state legislative rules. They then make the rules and they run it. To make a change there, I said, if you want to make a change, just pass it. They haven't passed any rule changes, which suggests they don't want any rule changes. Political reality is if New York City Council and the New York City electeds don't want to change their Board of Elections rules, this goes back to Luis's question, the state legislature will not do it. They're not going to unilaterally change the rules that New York City does not want changed. They just won't do that. They never have. They're not going to interfere in New York City's elections and Board of Election. That's why I said to the City Council, pass it. By the way, if they don't want to pass it, even if they just proposed it, there would be a starting point. But otherwise, you're asking the State Assembly, which is predominantly from New York City, to take an action against the desires of their New York City colleagues. That's not going to happen. Okay? All right, guys. Thank you. Oh, just for the record, by the way, Daily News. I read an article, or was referred to me. I never said the boyfriend is no longer with us. I said the boyfriend is no longer with us here. Here. I never inferred that he passed away, the boyfriend. I just said he's not here. Clarification. Melissa, Rob, Beth, Gareth, anyone want to add anything? Any facts not clear?
Nope. All good, Governor.
Nope. All good. All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's conference call. Thank you all for participating. You may now disconnect.